The realization struck me more strongly than I cared to acknowledge because it had been so long since I had been touched. However, I felt his hands slide down the slope of my back slowly and tenderly. I opened my lips to speak, but nothing came out as my breath caught in my throat. Despite my racing thoughts, I said nothing. I convinced myself that everything was fine, that he was only assisting, and that I was only dreaming, but I wasn't. His hands hovered there for a moment on the edge where my towel ended. I sensed his hesitancy. I was able to sense and I told him, "It's okay," rather than stopping him. "You can also rub there." Like something poisoned, the words lingered in the atmosphere. And I knew I couldn't take them back as soon as I spoke them. Leonard remained silent. He also didn't stop. His hands were on me lower than they should have been when I closed my eyes. My heart was pounding frantically. I believed he could hear it. I wanted to get up, tell him to stop and move. However, I didn't. I was unable to. I allowed it to occur. I still don't understand why. Perhaps the loneliness was the cause. Perhaps even though it was wrong, I felt wanted because I was too desperate. Or perhaps I simply stopped caring. Everything in me was shattered that day on the beach, and I would never be the same. By the way, I appreciate your patience if you have read this far into the article. I am aware that hearing it is difficult. And thank you for listening. Please take a time to hit the like button and subscribe if you thought this video was interesting or if you think someone could identify with what I'm presenting. Sharing tales like this keeps me going and reassures me that I'm not alone. Let's return to the narrative now. Something changed after that beach day. I was unable to ignore it. What I observed, how I felt, and Leonard's subsequent expression. It was more than a fleeting glance or a fleeting moment. It never changed. There was always something unusual about him when I looked at him. Something I couldn't ignore but couldn't explain. I made an effort to bury it. I tried my best to act normal when we got home that evening. I prepared dinner. I inquired about school from Leonard. Late into the night, with trembling hands, I folded laundry. I continued playing back all of the events. I could feel the strain in my own body, his hands, and the way he hovered. I was ashamed of myself. And he made me feel that way about my own son, which is why I loathed him. Nothing caught Phoenix's attention. As usual, he arrived home late, his face exhausted and his tie unfastened. Only a shadow of the person he once was. He kissed my cheek out of habit. Long day. I inquired in the hopes of starting a discussion. He was practically halfway to the living room when he nodded and groaned. This was always the case. I once more felt invisible, and his presence seemed like an afterthought. Phoenix was snoring lightly next to me as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. Although the home was silent, my thoughts weren't. I couldn't stop thinking about Leonard, his hands and his eyes. I was aware that it was incorrect. Whatever it was, I knew I had to put an end to it before it progressed. There was another side of me, though, a darker, more alone side that yearned for attention, touch, and the sense of being noticed. Leonard remained silent for days, yet his quiet was more powerful than words. He wasn't avoiding me. Not precisely. Rather, he seemed to remain nearer. I allowed it to happen when I saw him observing me when I cleaned, cooked, or just sat by myself on the couch at night. I didn't stop him. I didn't let myself stop. The following weekend followed. The home seemed stuffy and it was hot once more. As before, Phoenix was gone, working a last-minute shift, leaving Leonard and I by ourselves. I asked him if he wanted to spend some time alone at the beach once more. I have no idea why I did that. Perhaps I believed that being outside would help me decompress. Perhaps I wanted to see if I could ignore it all by testing myself. This time the trip was silent, but Leonard was not wearing his headphones. He simply sat there with his knee bouncing uneasily while gazing out the window. I wanted to break the silence by saying something, anything at all. However, the words lodged in my throat each time I opened my mouth. We arrived at the beach, which was nearly deserted. I recall how the wind felt against my face and how blue the sea appeared. As previously, I laid up the towels once again and Leonard assisted me in getting everything ready. I didn't ask him to oil my back this time. I was unable to. Rather, I closed my eyes and laid there acting as though nothing was wrong. However, I could still feel his gaze even with my eyes closed. I sensed that he was observing me. Later that afternoon was the actual tipping point. Before leaving for home, we made the decision to wash off in the beach showers. Just to get the sand off our skin. It was meant to be brief. But something happened that I still don't understand. Leonard was the first to enter the showers and let the water stream down his back. I observed him for a while from a distance before entering as well. I'm not sure what overcame me, but I took off my outerwear and stood next to him, feeling the coolness of the water against my skin. Leonard gave me a shocked expression. He said nothing, and I'm not sure if it was because he was surprised, confused, or anything else. I gave him a serious look before saying, "You ought to remove your shorts as well. You must have a thorough wash." I have no idea why I said it. Perhaps I was testing him and myself, or perhaps I just wanted to show myself that I was in charge and could end this. After a brief moment of hesitation, he followed my instructions and took down his shorts. And there we were, both of us alone, with the water rushing down on us and erasing everything but our shared emotions. With my back to him, I mutely said, "Help me with my back." And he did. Although his hands were cautious once more, the strain was obvious. I sensed it in him. I sensed it within myself. I froze as he touched my waist. The sound of the water appeared to drown out everything else as the air around us seemed to get thicker. I could have just left. I could have stopped it, but I chose to lean in closer to him instead. I took hold of his hands and held them against my chest. And he didn't back off when I did. I won't explain what happened next because I can't. It was an instant, a haze of loneliness, yearning, and something more I won't mention. It wasn't sluggish, nor was it soft. It was passionate, desperate, and completely incorrect. But I was unable to stop it. I had no desire to. After it was over, we just stood there while the water continued to rain down on us, erasing the proof but leaving the reality intact. I allowed him to hold me for a longer period of time than anyone has in years. After that, we didn't communicate. In silence, we packed up, dried off, and made our way back to the car. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Leonard's red face and rigid movements. I was aware that I had ruined everything. I was aware that we had passed a boundary that would never be crossed again. Nevertheless, I felt alive for the first time in years. At first, the drive home was peaceful. It felt like the air itself was pushing down on us and the car was too small and heavy. I tried to focus on the road while holding onto the wheel, but my thoughts were racing. I could still feel the weight of all we had just done: Leonard, his hands, and his body. I couldn't stop staring at him from the passenger seat. His jaw was fixed, his cheeks flushed, and he sat rigidly, gazing out the window when suddenly he spoke. "Mom," he began in a quiet, hesitant voice. I kept my eyes off of him. I heard him, but I couldn't. What took place back there? A beat skipped in my chest. I briefly thought of feigning not to have heard him, dismissing it and shifting the topic, but there was no use in acting that way. Not after our actions. After taking a trembling breath, I answered, "I'm not sure." That was the reality, or as near to it as I could make it. I had no idea what had occurred or why. I simply knew that everything was different. It wasn't until we got into the driveway that we spoke again. Despite my turning off the automobile, neither of us moved. For the first time, I noticed something frightening in Leonard's eyes as he finally gave me a serious glance. It wasn't uncertainty, remorse, or even humiliation. It was a yearning. He inquired, "How long have you felt this way?" I had been asking myself the same question, so his remarks made me shudder. It felt like a dam had burst inside of me when I glanced at him. Whispering, "I don't know," I said. "Perhaps longer than I'd like to admit." After that, we both just sat in the dark and were silent. I assumed we would walk inside, attempt to forget everything, and act as though nothing had occurred. However, Leonard had different plans. He leaned in to give me a kiss before I could open the door. At first, it was tentative and gentle, as though he was worried that I would back off. However, I didn't. I kissed him back after letting him kiss me, and then I lost control. I'm not sure if it was the years of neglect, the loneliness, or Leonard's expression, which suggested that no one had looked at me in a long time, but I allowed it to happen in front of our house. With his hands moving over me as though they were meant to be there, Leonard drew me into him. I was alive. I had a sense of belonging. For the first time in years, I felt noticed. Anything else didn't matter to me. How long we remained entangled together is unknown to me. But after a while we went inside. I only recall the sensation of his hand on mine. I don't recall much of the walk to the door. Between us, the quiet hums like electricity. We didn't talk. We didn't have to. Everything intensified as soon as we entered, as though we had been holding back for too long and the dam had finally exploded. The days that followed were a haze. Leonard remained near me, often finding an excuse to touch me or give me a quick glance while no one else was there. Stop, draw away, stop, whatever it was, I told myself. However, I always felt the same sense of loneliness when I looked at him. We seemed to be mirror images of one another, reflecting the same emptiness and hunger, and I was unable to refuse. I had no desire to. I used to lie in bed with Phoenix at night and listen to his breathing while I stared up at the ceiling. In the adjacent room, Leonard would come to mind. The sensation of his hands and how he restored my sense of life. I would then shut my eyes. In my chest, the guilt coiled like a snake. Couldn't last, I knew. Even though I knew it was wrong, I was powerless to stop it. Every day the tension between us increased until it blew up. One night it was late. Phoenix had returned to his job. Leonard and I were in the kitchen while Issa slept. I felt him behind me as I was preparing the dishes, trying not to think about it. He was staring at me the same way he had on the beach when I turned around. I tried to warn Leonard in a quiet voice, but he persisted. He drew nearer until I could feel his breath on my neck. "Mom," he muttered. "I can't stop thinking about you." I froze. My heart was pounding frantically. I believed it would blow up. I wanted to tell him to stop, to return to his room, and to stop bothering me. However, I didn't. Rather, I gave him a look and said the one inappropriate thing. "I am also unable to quit." That was the end of it. It all fell apart at that very instant. Leonard gave me another, more intense kiss, this time out of desperation. I returned the kiss. Even though it was wrong, I didn't care. Phoenix, yeah, and the life we had created together didn't matter to me. My kid Leonard was everything that mattered to me. The sole individual who gave me a sense of importance. Since that day at the beach, nothing has been the same. Actually, I doubt that they ever will. We went too far, Leonard and I. One that, despite my best efforts to tell myself differently, cannot be erased. What began as a single moment has evolved into something beyond my control. Even though my remorse is present and persistent, it won't stop me. And that's the aspect that most terrifies me. I wonder how my husband Phoenix and my daughter Ya are oblivious to the fissures that are forming across our family while I watch them every day. Perhaps they are too preoccupied with their personal affairs to notice my decline. Or perhaps I've simply become more adept at concealing it. But I know in my heart that it can't go on forever. There's a method for secrets to surface. And everything I've attempted to prevent will be destroyed by the repercussions when they do. I've often convinced myself that this is incorrect and that both Leonard and I are deserving of more. However, I lose myself every time he touches me or looks at me as though I'm the only person in the world. He gives me a sense of aliveness that I may not have had in years or perhaps in my lifetime. And I have to accept that as the reality. I have no idea how to solve it. I'm not sure if I can make it better. And for that reason, I would want to tell you my story. Perhaps there is a solution out there that I haven't considered. Before it's too late, perhaps you might assist me figure out how to get out of this mess I made. I would therefore appreciate hearing from you if you have any suggestions, have experienced this circumstance yourself, or know someone who has. And let this serve as a warning at the very least. You never would have imagined the places loneliness might take you. Avoid getting lost the way I did. Keep your reality from collapsing before you comprehend what is going on. Because there is no turning back once you cross that line. I appreciate you listening. Kindly provide your opinions. If you thought this video was useful, please like it and subscribe for more. I must understand that I am not alone. Sometimes the biggest betrayals we do aren't against other people, but rather against ourselves.